So, Kal Kadosh Boker Tov, we're going to continue with Daf Kuf Lamed Vav, Amud Aleph. This is 136a1. So, it says in the Gemara as follows. Amar Ravada Barava says Ravada Barava, Malino Tom Manashach. If you remember, we said that if a person is going to be a safek, which means that we ask the question that within 30 days, we don't know if a child is a nefel. So, if we don't know if the child is a nefel, so then the question is, what's going on over here? At the end of the day, we don't know what's going on, whether if it's a nefel, how do you do brit milah to a child on Shabbat? So we said, we do brit milah manashach. If the person is if the child is going to live, so then you did a good brit milah. And if chas shalom the child was not going to live and it's a nefel, you're just cutting flesh. So therefore, there's no isur of chilul Shabbat. You just took flesh and you started cutting meat. There's nothing there. But now we are going to ask on this. And the question that we're going to ask on this is as follows. Safek ben Shiva, Safek ben Shmuna. What happens if you have a doubt whether this child is 7 months or 8 months? So, you're not going to be Mechalel Shabbat. Amai, why? Nimaleno also do the Brit Milah Manashach. Im Chayhu, if he's going to live because he's the 7 months. So, Shapir Kamahin. And if not, so why did you say if you have a doubt whether it's 7 or 8, you don't do it? But if you have a doubt whether a child's a nefel, because every child is a safek if they're a nefel, they're going to outlive the 30 days or not, and that's why the pidyon ben is only done after the 30 days. So there we said we do it. Why? What's the difference? So Amar Mor Bered Ravina, Ana ve'Nechumer Zechar Tagimna. So it says, right, Mor Bered Ravina, I myself and Nechumer Zechar both explain the bright. We also do the Brit Milah. So what are we dealing with? Elal Machshirei Milah. Machshirei Milah v'aliba de Rebbe Eliezer, which means you're not allowed to do, there's a concept of the Milah itself, and there's Machshirei Milah. Machshirei Milah is anything which is needed for the necessity of the Brit Milah. So in such a case, Machshirei Milah, right, he says, for example, for a Safek Nefel, to do lasot, for example, the Sakin and all these things, so that's according to Rebbe Eliezer. Because remember, according to Rebbe Eliezer, we said that you're allowed to be Mechalel et Shabbat to do Machshirei Milah as well. So he says, so the Braita is coming to teach you that only a child that you know b'vadai that is not a nefil, which means that he was born after 9 months, right? But if you have a doubt because he was born Safek Shiva, Safek Shmuna, we're not going to be Mechalel Shabbat for the Machshirei Milah. Not the Milah itself. Milah itself for sure you could do. There's no problem. It's Machshirei Milah that we have a question. Okay? Fine. Amar Abaye. Abaye says, Ketanai, really be'emet, it's a machloket Tanaim. Why? Right? What happens right now if you have an animal that dies? There's tumat nevilah. Now, what happens is, it says that if anybody's going to touch the nevilah, they're going to become tameh until the nighttime. Now, it says, what does it mean? Asher hilachem lo'chla. Lavi ben shmona. This comes to include a ben shmona, which is going to be a nefel. So you see, come from here, right? That's what it says here. Lashon ben shmona is bebemot shishlem tisha chodshei ibur, but it was born in the 8th month instead of the 9th month, right? Because be'ema gasa, no be'ema daka. Be'ema daka is 4 or 5 months for birth. Be'ema gasa is 9 months, right? Just like a human being. So now what's going to happen is that if it's going to be that it was born in the 8th month, right? She'en shchitato metarato. The shchita does not permit it from tumat nevelah, which means that it's still chashuv kemet, and therefore if you do the shechita, right, it does not help, and therefore it's still considered nevelah. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon omrim. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon both say, shchitato mitarato. No, the shechita does purify it, and it's not mitameh tumat nevelah anymore. So it says the Gemara, Ma'ila ba kamipargez, that not the Masei machloket, which means more savar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon hold that a nefel, even though it cannot live, still chayhu, still right now it's chay, and therefore the shchita does mitaherota, right? And more savar, and the Tanakama holds metu, that he's considered dead, and therefore the shchita is not mitaheroto. So the same halacha would apply by a nefel of a brit milah. If he's considered chay, so he's malet chay, right? And therefore he's maloto nechshak yoseh chabura. And if he's met, he's mechatech babasar, right? So he says, Rava says, no, that's not the machlok between them. So one second. If they're already making a machloket to do with tum'ah, why don't they make a machloket to do with eating? Are you allowed to eat the animal at all or not? And nobody had a machloket. which means if the entire concept is it mitameh, not mitameh, mitaher, tumat nevela, why don't you ask, are you allowed to eat this animal or not? Right? Which means that if it's alive and you cut it, so you're allowed to eat it, and if not, not. But we don't do that. It's only by tumah v'tara. Why? But according to everybody, this nefel is considered a met. Okay? And therefore, for sure, if you already did the shechita, you're still not allowed to eat it. But Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, they hold ki trefa, it's like a trefa. Trefa laf agav the meta ishchitata mitarata. Achenam lo shna. What about a trefa? You took a trefa animal, right? By the way, there's a very common misconception. Nevelotu trefot is not kosher. It's also not kosher, but it's not kosher. For example, somebody is going to eat chazir. Eating chazir is not nevelotu trefot. It's a non-kosher animal. Nevela means that it's a kosher animal that died without shechita or without a proper shechita. That's called the nevela. Trefa means that you did the shechita, everything was fine, but inside it had problems. It had trefot. It wasn't going to withstand the year. It wasn't going to live out the year. So, for example, there you got big machlokot, the Bet Yosef. That's why you have chalak Bet Yosef and silchot and certain things. A whole bunch of different minagim and everything about the silchot, right? Or about different things about what is considered be'emet taref, not taref. But that's trefa. That's trefot. So here it says like this. It should be like a trefa. Trefa, afagav de meta ishchitam tarata. Trefa, even though it's considered dead, still the shchita is purifying it. And therefore it's not a nevela anymore. So to hear a nefel should be the exact same thing, right? It says that even though it's considered a met, shchita to mitarato, which means the shchita, right, should be mitaherota. That's what it should do. So v'rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, lo dami letrefa, it's not compared to, it's similar to a trefa. Why? Trefa ita lashata kosher. A trefa was a kosher animal, and then it became taref. Whether it was because of living conditions, viruses, right, that that it gets, or things like that. So he says, "Hi, but this child, lo ita lashot kosher. If it was born a nefel, it never had a shat kosher, never had a time which was fitting for it, because automatically it was going to die." And if you're going to tell me trefa mi beten, what about a trefa mi beten? Which means it was born a trefa. Sometimes it's born with certain defects in the body that it makes it into a trefa. So he says, Hatan yesh b'mina shchita, hachayen b'mina shchita. He says over there, by be'emot acherot, the same species has a shata kosher. And therefore also this trefa, the shchita should be mitaherota, which is like in Yadosh trefot. Here by nefel, every nefel is going to die within the month. And therefore the shchita is not mitarato. Okay? So he says, so they're going to ask now in the following question, do the rabbis actually argue on Rabbi Gamliel that he holds that a vlad be'ema until the 8th day is considered safek nefel, and even if you did the shchita, it's still a sur b'achila or lo? So you're going to tell me that they do argue, halacha kimoto and halacha kimoto. Is the halacha like him or not? Which means, is it permitted to eat the animal or not? So do you have to wait 8 days in order to slaughter the animal and then eat it? So Tashema, we're going to bring a proof. Egel shenolad b'yom tov. An egel that was born in Yom Tov. Shochatin oto b'yom tov. So you're allowed to do shechita on Yom Tov. And it's not considered muktzeh. So you see from here, you're allowed to come and do shechita to an egel ben yomo, to a calf the same day it was born and eat it. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it's a safek nefel until the 8th day. So it's asur to eat it. So obviously we don't paskin like Rashbag, we actually paskin like Chachamim. The Chachamim argue on Rashbag. So it says Gemara, no. Hachama iskina, what are we dealing with? We already know that it finished the 9 months, which means that since it finished the pregnancy, it finished the term of pregnancy, for sure it's not a nefel, even according to Rashbag. But he only said it's a safek nefel if you don't know if it finished the 9-month term pregnancy. So fine. Tashema, we're going to bring another proof now. Right? It says, V'shavim, both of them agree, Shim nolad hu mumavimo, that if it was born on Yom Tov and it's mum as well, shezemina muchan. Right? You're allowed to see the mum and to do shechita on Yom Tov. So you see from here, you're allowed to do shechita on an egel ben yomo. We're not going to suspect for safek nefel, not like Rashbag, but rather like Chachamim. So it says the Gemara, the same answer. We know that it already finished its term of pregnancy of 9 months. So Tashma, another proof. Tamar of Yudam Shmuel says Shmuel Halakha is like Rashbag. Halakha is mashma that somebody argues on him. Shmamina that obviously the Chachamim argue on Rashbag. Okay, so it comes out from here, right, that there is obviously people that argue on Rashbag, and that's obviously going to be like Chachamim. Fine. Next. Amar Abaye. Abaye says, Nafal min agag o achalo ari. What happens right now if the blood dies within the 30 days? But because of an outside case, because of something that happened on the outside, right? Whether it was that he fell off the roof or a lion came and ate it. So divra kol chayu, so according to everybody, even according to Rashbag, but we're not going to suspect that it was a sfek nefel, right? But since we didn't see what happened afterwards, we're just going to say that it was something, it wasn't something natural, it was force majeure that it died, right? A lion came and it ate it up. Keep thinking. So when is the machloka between them? Shepihek umet. Died on its own. It just sneezed, yawned, whatever it was, and it just dropped dead. Okay? So it says, Mor Savar, the rabbis hold chayhu, that it was a living, or Mor Savar, metu. What's the nafkamina? It says, liftor mina yibum, to be poter mina yibum, which means, if this child dies with, right, imet aviv shel katan zeh. If the father of this child dies without children, other than this child, and now the child dies within the 30 days, according to Chachamim, we say that he was alive, and therefore, right, the wife is patura from the yibum chalitza. But according to Rashbag, it's safek nefel, and therefore she has to do chalitza. Everyone understands what's going on. Remember, if a person dies without children, right, so then his brother has to do yibum, has to marry his wife. Or if they don't want to do the yibum, they do chalitza, which means it's like a type of a divorce, that it's, taking off the big shoes, spitting, so on and so forth. So now what happens is, what happens if he died with children, with a child? So then it's patur. So now the halachado states is that this entire concept of the patur, this entire concept of the exemption of the yibum, is that if a person has a child. So what happens now, right? The father dies, and he had this child. But this child died within the 30 days. So according to the rabbis, he had a child. Since he had a child, for sure he was going to live. And therefore, patur from yibum and from chalitza, nothing. You don't have to do anything. Why? He left a child. The child died. That was afterwards, right? Within 30 days, but it wasn't an nefel. It was a good child. According to Rashbag, since it's a fake nefel, she has to do chalitza. So she wasn't exempt to the world yet. Nafal min agag o achala ari divra kol chayu. Ask the Gemara if it fell off the roof, or if a lion came and ate it. According to everybody, he's still considered alive. Rav Papa Ravuna Rav Yeshua ikla lebe Rava. Bered Rav Ida bar Avin. Vavilo igla tipta v'yamama d'shiva. It says Rav Papa and Ravuna Rav Yeshua, they visited the house of Rava, the son of Ida bar Avi, and they made for them a igla tilta, an egel meshulash, right? Which is basically very, very good. Whether it's the third one for the stomach, right? So it's a whole thing here. Okay. Shlishi labeten. Okay. Now it says over here, right? So now what happens? It says, this is on the 7th day. And some people say, so some people say that they said that if we're going to wait until the night of the 8th day, then they would do shechita and they would actually eat it. Because now it's on a safek nefel. Hashta, but right now on the 7th day, they don't want to eat from it. It's safek nefel. So you see from here, right, that even though this egel, right, the mita came from somewhere else because they did the shechita, obviously, and it didn't die on its own, still there was a safek nefel and they didn't want to eat from it. And not like Abaye. So says the Gemara, metu. If it dies on its own, according to everybody, it's considered a nefel, safek nefel at least. When it's a machloke, if it fell off the roof or a lion ate it, then more savar metu, more savar chayhu. That's the machloket, whether it's going to be safek nefel or it's still considered alive. Bered Rav Yosef, the Rav Dimi bar Yosef, the son of Rav Dimi bar Yosef, he tell Lehu Yenuka, he had a child. Within 30 days he died. Yativ kamita belavei, he wanted to do avelut. Amale Avua, his father told him, Savrodnita kabai lemeichal. What, you want to eat foods, good foods of avelut? That's why you're trying to do avelut without any necessity. Amalei, he told him 1 second. Kim libe shekar lo chodeshav. He says he knows that he had a 9-term pregnancy, which means there's no avelut on a child which is less than 30 days old. However, he told him, yeah, but 1 second. He for sure finished the 9 terms of the 9 months of pregnancy, right? So that's why he wanted to do the avelut. Okay, Ravashi ikla be Rav Kana. Ravashi went and he visited the house of Rav Kana. Itra beminta begot latin yomin. So I had a bad thing, the varra, within 30 days of the birth. Chazi doesn't come in again. He wanted to sit tavel with somebody else now. Amalei told him, which means that it's a fake nevel, so there's no avelut. Amalei, he said, he knows that there's kallo chodashav. Itmar was stated, met if he died within the 30 days, and he doesn't have any other children, and then she got married to somebody else, but she felt that she doesn't have to do yibum, right? So he says, what happened? Amar Ravina Mishmed Rava, says Ravina the name of Rava, Kuflam Vavum Bet, Imeshet Israeli, Evetzen Eshet Israel, Choletzet. She does chalitza from the first husband. Eshet Koheni, but if she got married now to a Kohen, now if she does chalitza, she's going to be a surah to the Kohen, because the Kohen is a sur b'grusha v'chalutza. Only to an almanah he's permitted. But grusha v'chalutza is prohibited. Okay, grusha min ha'Torah and Rabbanan from the chalutza, because it's like girushin. Okay, so it says imeshet koheni ena choletz. She doesn't do chalitza. Rav Shavia mishmed Rav Amar. Rav Shavia, the name of Rava, says achatzu v'chatzu choletz. It doesn't matter from who. She always does chalitza. Why? Because we don't hold of shita chachamim even by a shet kohen, and then she would become prohibited to her husband. Amar le Ravina, le Rav Shravia, says Ravina to Rav Shravia, beurta amar Rava hachi. This is what Rava said during the nighttime. Right, what you just said in his name, because he said Rav Shavia mishmed Rava Amar. He said the name of Rava. However, the Letzafra in the morning, Hadarbe, he retracted. Amalei, he said, Shiritua, you permitted the Eshet Kohen without Chalitza. Yeher Avat Tishut Arba. Also, Chelev should be permitted, which means the Yisur of Achila Chelev, by which has no safek, should also be permitted as well. What does that mean? Again, one more time. Yeah, that you don't have to do it. That you don't have to do it. That means the second one said, Rav Shavia Mishmed Rava said chalitza, that she does have to do chalitza, and the first one was Ravina Mishmed Rava. So both of them were in the name of Rava. You understand? The first one was Ravina in the name of Rava that says that if it was a wife of Yisrael, she should do chalitza, because anyway it doesn't prohibit her. If it's a wife of Kohen, she shouldn't do chalitza, but then it's going to prohibit her. Rav Shavia said in the name of the Rava, no, that you always do chalitza even if it is going to prohibit her. So then says Ravina to Rav Shavia, I'm sorry. Right? In the nighttime he said like you, but then he retracted and he said like me. Okay? Next, 2 dots. Rav Yehuda Matir. Rav Yehuda says that it's permitted to do abri milan androginos. Remember, androginos means it has both male and female organs. Amr Rav Shizbi Amr Chasta says Rav Shizbi means chasta. Lola kol Rav Yehuda androginos zacharu. Not to everything that he says it's a zachar. Only to do the brit milah. Shimata omerkem is if so. If you're going to say that he's always a zachar, barachin yarech. If you should make arachin is the value that goes to the Bet HaMikdash, to Ekdesh, you should also do the value like a male. He doesn't do that. I mean, how do we know that you don't do the value? The time was learned in a sifra, hazachar v'lo zachar. You only do the value of a zachar, but not on a tuntum regos. Tuntum means that it's covered over, so you don't know whether it's a male or a female. And the reginos has both. So yachol, I would have thought, say lo berech ish. It shouldn't be berech ish, but it should be like an isha. At least it should be like a woman. Which means v'im nekevahi is zachar v'day. It has to be for sure a male or for sure a female, but not like on the tumdov or androginos. Okay, ustam kufla mezan amud aleph 137:1. Ustam sifra is Rabbi Yehuda. The stam sifra in the Midrash Torah Kohanim is Rabbi Yehuda. As the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, the stam sifra is going to be Rabbi Yehuda. So it says, so if so, this brighta is going like Rabbi Yehuda. And still he says, and the androginos is not going to be considered as zachar. So it's only to do with brit milah that it's considered as zachar. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, we're going to do until the Mishnah says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. After the Nami Tanina, we also learn the same thing. Akol ksherim lekadesh. Everybody is kosher to put the paraduma right with tochel maim chayim. So to do the mechatat, to mix up the water, the paraduma with ashes, and then to come and sprinkle it, right? So everyone's kosher to come and to mix it together. Chutz mecharesh shoter gesefer hacharesh, a deaf mute, shoter, somebody that's 100% there, and a katan, and a minor. Yehuda machshir b'katan. Yehuda says that a minor is kasher to do it. Uposel v'isha v'androginos. But he said that androginos and isha is prohibited. So you see from here, androginos is like a woman, like Rav Chasta. So you see from here that it's not like for everything. Shema Milah, so this is what we actually learn. So it's only by bring Milah does the Yehuda hold that the Yunos is like a male. So that's the Gemara, Ma'ishla Milah. Why is Milah different from any other halacha? So it says, what does it mean, kol zachar? The word kol comes to include androgynos, which means that it should be like a zachar to do with the Milah. Okay? Which means that the word imol lachem kol zachar, kol comes to include even androgynos, that it's also like a male, that you would do a bri milah for it. And that's it. Mizrat Hashem, we continue tomorrow with the Mishnah.
Hazak Baruch.